Humanity Matters.
Welcome, everyone, to our next installment of Legacy Chronicles, Learning from the Past, Shaping the Future. I'm your host, Donna Rosenblum, Director of Education here at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. And I have as our guest today, Herb Grubman. Very welcome, Herb, for coming today, being with us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's wonderful. And we're going to talk today about what it means to be a second generation and Herb's involvement, because not only does he tell his parents' story, but he's also a docent here at our museum. So he wears two hats, and I'm sure wears many more than that, but those are the two main ones at HMTC. So let's first start by talking about briefly your parents. So tell us a little bit about them.
Sure. Mm-hmm. First of all, again, thanks for having me.
No, we're very happy to have you.
Well, my parents were Polish. They were born in Poland, and they were born in the eastern part of Poland, which is probably the worst spot you'd want to live in those days. Mm-hmm. My mom was from a town called Dęblin, and she had a pretty typical childhood for Jewish people up until the time when the war broke out. But
were they farmers? Were they people?
My grandfather on my mom's side worked as a shoemaker, and he manufactured the top of the shoe, not the sole part. And there was a difference in those days. And there was a lot of discrimination, but they managed to, live a life like most working class poor Jewish people lived up until the war broke out. Unfortunately, my mom was around 12 years old at the time. And it changed her life, along with all the other Jewish people in the town of Dęblin at the time, quite drastically.
How many Jews lived in the town, roughly?
I would say roughly there was several thousand.
Okay.
Several thousand Jewish people living in the town, and they had a long history there. The town, Dęblin, was a military base for the Polish Army, so there was an Air Force Academy there, and it was also situated adjacent to the Vistula River and a couple of other strategic locations that made it important for the military usage. So it was, again, another reason why you wouldn't want to be there, because it was a spot that the Germans wanted to conquer quite aggressively. Unfortunately, as the war broke out, ghettoization of the area started to take place, and before you know it, my mother was forced into a labor camp where she worked loading coal onto railroad cars, and this is as a 12-year-old girl. She was in the camps with her brother and sister, and before you know it, the deportation started to take place, and she was separated and never saw her parents again at the age of 12. And she tells a very heartbreaking story about how that really transpired and what impact it had on her. She lost all of her sisters as a result of the war, her parents, any
How many siblings? How many siblings in the family? You mentioned a brother and sister, but
yep. My mom had 4 other sisters besides herself. Unfortunately, one actually made it through the war and came to the United States about a year after my mom did, but she was so impacted by illness while she was a forced laborer that she died at the age of 27 years old here in the States after surviving the war. So that was like a double shock for my mom. On my dad's side, my dad came from a town a little further east, right on the what's now the Belarusian Polish border, called the Biała Podlaska. And Biała Podlaska also had a military advantage that the Germans were interested in, and it also was like a big staging point for them in preparation for their invasion into Russia. So it wasn't a good place to be. My dad was the oldest of all of his siblings. He had 2 sisters and a brother. My grandfather was a teacher, and he taught in a religious school in those days. They called him cheder. which is like a yeshiva, so to speak. My dad was drafted into the Polish army at the outbreak of the war. And
how old was he?
At the time, he was about 20 years old.
Okay.
And he never saw his parents again, unfortunately, because as the Soviets or the Russians and the Germans were trying to work out which territory they wanted to conquer, Polish soldiers were taken prisoner, and he was sent to Siberia in a prison camp. And he was only liberated when the Russians started to lose so many soldiers in their battle against the Germans that they started a Polish army, the first Polish army, and under the Russian command, and they sent these soldiers into battle. And my father fought his way all through the battle to the west into Berlin, and actually helped conquer Berlin. So I was very proud of him. He became a captain in the army, and I have a lot of great pictures of him.
And how did your parents meet?
My parents met in a displacement camp. My father's military unit started to occupy areas where the labor camps existed, and in a displacement camp, after my mother got out of her forced labor camp, there was an opportunity to meet people and try to kind of get your life back together. And she met my dad there, and they got married not too long thereafter.
All right.
And they made it to the United States.
Right.
After several years wandering through Europe trying to find a home, there was still a lot of anti-Semitism there, and there wasn't as much opportunity. They had some relatives. My father had some relatives in New York, distant cousins, and they sponsored them. And they came over on the SS Liberty in 1951, a year before I was born. And my father started from scratch to build the American dream, and he did. He was successful.
So they came to New York, and they relocated where?
In the Bronx.
In the Bronx.
In the Bronx. And I was born and raised in the Bronx. My sister, Irene, she's a few years older than me. She was born in Paris, where they wound up living for a few years until they were able to get to the U.S.
So growing up in this environment, did your parents openly talk about being survivors? Did they, or did they shelter you and not talk about it? Did they have a network of other survivors in the Bronx where they lived that they kind of got together and would speak about their experiences or speak in Yiddish? Or what was your upbringing like?
Sure. Well, my parents did speak Yiddish. That was the language that they spoke primarily in the household. They also spoke Polish. Once they knew I was able to understand what they were saying in Yiddish, they started to speak more Polish because they didn't want me to hear certain things.
Right.
And they had friends that were primarily Holocaust survivors as well, whether it was relatives or people that lived in the building that we lived in, or different, they call them societies, where basically they would have monthly meetings and parties to kind of bring the people together. Right. So,
because people didn't have family. I mean, you obviously didn't have any family, so these people became your family.
Exactly. And some of these societies had like burial privileges where they had their own plots and cemeteries, and it would also included that type of relationship. But I knew that my parents were Holocaust survivors at a very young age. They spoke with an accent, and often you'd hear them talking with their friends about what happened during the war, what life was like, how they struggled to come over to the States. And they were often sharing those things. They didn't necessarily tell it to me personally, but I would overhear it.
But you would overhear it.
I would overhear it. And I knew that my household was different because of that.
So explain a little bit about that. What were maybe some of the things that your parents did or that happened in your house that maybe didn't happen to some of your friend's house? Sure.
My parents were extremely loving and caring parents. I couldn't ask for a better quality of parenting than I got from my parents. Unfortunately, they had suffered a lot of trauma from their experience, and it reflected the way they dealt with everyday situations in life. My mom was a very nervous and anxious person. She was a half-empty type of person, and always was trying to prepare herself, for the worst, and and had a tough time seeing the brighter side of life. And she didn't want to forget herself of any lot of luxuries, even then when eventually she could afford those. She didn't feel like that wasn't necessary for her. She was just happy to exist. And I guess that was a carryover from the way she had to rummage
struggle.
for food and struggle during her
Right.
days
So that
as a
means
slave
so as a
laborer.
child, I'm assuming that you weren't showered with. You were loved, but you didn't have gifts, or like you weren't spoiled in that way.
No, not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, because my parents were immigrants and basically started from scratch, we lived a pretty meager existence initially. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and I shared a bedroom with my sister, my oldest sister, and my mom and dad slept on a high-rise in the hallway. And that wasn't that uncommon in those days, but certainly when I got a little older and started to have my own relationships and friends, I saw that they didn't live that way.
Right.
They had nice things in their house. We always had like secondhand furniture, and they always had new things and things that matched. And
What about food? How did your parents deal with food?
Food was a big part of our family existence. My mom was a great cook, and she could make amazing meals out of very few ingredients. And she refused to let us waste any food. Wasting food was
big no-no.
a big sin, and as a result, I probably ate too much as a kid because
You had to clean that
I had
plate.
to clean that plate.
Yes.
So I became a little overweight there as a young kid, but my mom was very caring and made sure I had everything that I needed. But it never was luxurious items. It was everything you needed, you had.
I'm assuming you also never went on a vacation, true vacation, besides like
so-
maybe going to the beach or something local.
It's interesting you should ask that because we did what we could. And in those days, families that lived in the Bronx where there was no air conditioning, everybody lived in apartments, would go to Far Rockaway. And families would rent a bungalow and live by the beach. Now, a bungalow was a high-end alternative in Rockaway.
Right.
We lived about a mile from the beach in old rooming houses that were in existence at the time, and my entire family would live in one room.
Oh my goodness.
All the beds were in one room. There was a bathroom on the floor that everybody shared, and we had a communal kitchen, which meant that each family had their own table and their own refrigerator, but the sink and the kitchen and the countertops in the kitchen was all shared. And I got to tell you, we had some of the greatest summers of my life there. Every year we would go, and the reason we went was my dad was able to commute from Manhattan out to Far Rockaway with the subway. And it wasn't until my dad started to make more money that we were able to get beyond that and go up to the Catskills for a vacation. And even there, we had the least expensive room where you'd have to walk to the dining room. We didn't have the main building, and we had the room with the bathroom on the floor. And I remember we finally evolved to the point where we had a shared bathroom with one other room. Of course, people you didn't know, but it was like a semi-attached room, and that was a big deal for us because now we didn't have to have the bathroom on the floor. But it was all good. It was all fun, and I appreciated every bit of it. And they did everything they could for me. They gave me every opportunity, and they sacrificed their whole life for me and my sister. And given their background and the horrors they went through, I think they did a good job.
Oh, absolutely. When did you actually hear, or did you ever sit down and hear your parents' stories from start to finish? Like, how old were you? First of all, did that happen? And what age was that?
Well, as I said before, I would overhear things.
Right, you knew things, but...
I would overhear things, and I was curious about certain things. I knew that my parents had suffered, and I remember distinctly always trying to inquire whether or not any of my friends who also had parents that had suffered in the Holocaust, if their parents knew any of my parents' relatives. Because I always felt if I could somehow find one of my parents' brothers or sisters, how happy it would make them. And as soon as I found that, oh, your parents were, they spoke with an accent, so where were they from? I was very inquisitive.
Right.
And I was always on a mission to try to, with a prayer, just maybe I could really help my parents with that.
Right.
As they got older, I was pretty obsessed with learning about the Holocaust and World War II, and I didn't miss any documentary. And then as I got a little bit more mature, I started reading a lot about it. So it was as a result, I pretty well read on the subject. And at that point, I started to try to piece things together, and then more questions would come out, and I would talk to my parents about it, and at that point they would tell me. I still feel to this day they still didn't tell me everything, but they made sure that they answered my questions, and they made sure that I was aware that this thing called the Holocaust happened and could happen again, and I should do everything I could to prevent it from happening again.
How old were they when they passed away?
My dad was 86 and my mom was 88.
And when was that?
My mom passed away 10 years ago, and my dad passed away about 21 years ago. So it's amazing how, given the fact that you could suffer so much early in your life, that you could still have the strength to live a good life.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure they had such joy that you had children, your sister, in the all of that. That I think that comes full circle. I think for many survivors, that's the greatest healing factor was the grandchildren, the children and the but the grandchildren particularly. I hear that a lot, where the second generation will say, "Well, with me, my parents might not have been, so loving or what, but the grandchildren, it was a whole different ballgame." And
they turned me into the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I have been blessed to have a couple of grandchildren, and they mean so much to me.
Yeah.
So they taught me a lot of wonderful, wonderful things, and a lot about family values and sticking with the family and really protecting what I have.
Yeah.
And they taught me how to really be strong and how to overcome all the challenges and obstacles that life brings to you.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if I could have done it without that. So it was a mixed experience for me. It really was.
It's a wonderful sentiment. So let's talk about your work here. So when did you decide that you wanted to become involved with HMTC?
Well, it was interesting. I had invested the time to put together with my son my mom's story. And we had a movie made, and I began the effort to try to give it to different organizations so that they may use it as testimonial. And with that, I contacted the HMTC and learned that there were volunteer opportunities. And I was lucky enough to meet you and Zach, and we had a nice chat. And I realized, this is good. This is good. This is what I would like to do. I'd like to, help with the effort to educate people about the horrible things that could come out of hatred, and to really target young people who are often not educated enough on the history of the Holocaust and World War II, and to really fill in the void that was starting to be created by the death of so many 1G Holocaust survivors, and realize, as with my parents, they're not here to tell the story.
That's right.
But somebody has to.
Has to do
and
it.
if people don't step up to do it, it's not only going to be a lost history, but it's going to be a lost lesson that everybody needs to learn.
Right. Or it might not be lost history, but it will be distorted history. Okay? Right?
Correct.
You're not getting the
Correct.
You're not getting the survivor telling, and you're not getting the child of a survivor telling the story. And, when, like that telephone game, you say something, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's something totally different. So it needs to be documented, preserved, and told authentically.
I couldn't agree more.
That's our mission here.
And there's also the concern that young people today don't even know about the Holocaust. So they're not even learning anything about it.
Right.
Not only are they learning the mixed message or the false narrative, but they're not learning anything about it.
Right.
So it's really a critical thing that has to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as a social studies teacher, you have to understand that in the New York State curriculum, every year there's another year of social studies that gets added to the curriculum, but nothing gets taken away. So when I started teaching in 1986, we hadn't had the fall of communism, we hadn't Tiananmen Square, like all of those, right? So now, if I would be in the classroom, I would have to teach all of that as well. It becomes very challenging, very difficult to be able to get it all in. So, not that that's an excuse in any way, but that's part of the issue of history, and we have to make sure that all history is told from all perspectives by all people. That's an extremely important point. So you're here, you volunteer your time, you're a docent, you lead museum tours. We're now in the point of getting your mother's story and father's story together to do 2G testimony. What would you say to other 2Gs who maybe aren't ready to do this or haven't made the decision to do this? What would be your words to maybe make them think differently?
Well, I would encourage them to get involved and to measure for themselves the degree to which they want to participate. One of the nice things that I learned from our initial meeting was just that. Do as much as you want, do as little as you want,
right.
but get involved.
Yeah.
Sitting home and talking or complaining or worrying without action gets zero results. So we have an opportunity here to get results.
That's right.
And do whatever you can. Some people have strengths. I don't mind talking in front of people. Others do.
Right.
So there's things you could write. There's things you could contribute. There's many ways you could help here. As long as we're all focused on the same goal of educating children to try to create a better world without hate, we all win.
Exactly.
So why not?
I couldn't agree with you more. But there are those that don't feel that they have something to say or something to add. And I think it's important, especially coming from you, to be able to say, yes, you do. And the only way you're going to know is if you try. So come down, see what we do here, watch a tour, see something in action, and see how you want to be involved. Some people start out small, and then then they're here all the time. Then, they almost like live here. Great, so everybody has to find their way. Today, we were just discussing this before we got on the podcast. It's the world is kind of on fire. And what are your words about dealing with so much anger and hate and the rise in anti-Semitism, the blaming of Jews, all worldwide? One thing is criticism of Israel, but you now have a full-blown hatred of Jews in general. What are your words about that? What would you?
Well, the first thing I'll say is I'm very saddened by this. Nobody likes to be a target of hatred. On the other hand, I'm not surprised because this isn't the first time Jewish people had to endure such a challenging time. It's happened many, many times over history, and it probably will always continue. What makes things very difficult now is the fact that we live in a world where social media and AI, artificial intelligence, is so powerful and can move information in whatever form that gets created in a second. So it becomes that much harder to control. I think people need to be aware of the fact that a lot of the things that they're reading are just geared to be misinformation and false, and try to get people confused and angry. There's a lot of anger, a lot of unhappy people in this world, and unfortunately, it gets directed at the people that they want to direct it at. I always believe that a hater is somebody who hates themselves more than anybody else. And I will tell anybody that thinks that if somebody is anti-Semitic or a Jew hater, he hates a lot of people, not just Jews. So if you side, you go on, align yourself with somebody who's a Jew hater. If you're an Irishman or an Italian or an Indian or a black or a Muslim, you name it, he hates you too. So the world needs to know that, and the world needs to focus, and the Jewish people themselves need to do a better job educating the common person about all the contributions that Jewish people have made to this world. We've done so much. Yes, there's many Jews that have done unscrupulous and bad things, but that's everyone. Every type of person has that in their midst, and that's sad. But the Jews have done a lot of wonderful things, from philanthropy to the arts to medicine, to business to science. You go across the board to journalism and to motion pictures and theater and music, you name it, we've made an impact. And the world needs to understand that there's a lot of wonderful Jewish people, and actually to continue to inspire us to do more good. That's all part of there's an expression, the Yiddish or the Jewish neshama, which means that that's the soul of a Jewish person is dedicated to do better. To help the world become a better place. That's what we do. That's what we live for. That's what's taught to us. And it's not all the things that are being told and spread about us that are predominantly all lies and falsehoods. People need to understand that we're a group of people just like anybody else. A very small percentage of the world's population that's made a very big impact on the world. As people learn that and they realize that that's the truth, I think a lot of people will be a little bit more open to accepting Jews as being a little bit different than them. We are different, just like other people are different from other people. We're really no different than any other group, but yet we're singled out for being different. And that's the sad part. And I have a hope that through educational initiatives like we do here at the HMTC, that will make a big impact.
I hope so. And
there's a lot of other organizations that are trying to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
But one of the challenges I see is the Jewish people themselves need to come together. And become a little bit more united. We're a little bit too at odds with each other based upon some of our political and religious beliefs, and we need to unite. And as a united force, we'll be much more effective and a lot more powerful when it comes to trying to shape the future of our world.
Well, thank you for that lovely piece. And yes, I mean, look, it's all about humanity matters, right? HMTV is all about that we are part of the human world. We all do our part, and that's kind of what we really have to focus on, not the differences, but the fact that we're all in this together. If we can do that, I think we can move forward in many great ways. So thank you, Herb, for being with us today. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And please like, subscribe. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much.